After I paid almost $500,000 for their bill, my son said to pay rent or get out. I just smiled and made one phone call. Within hours, everything he thought he controlled began to crumble. He had no idea that his mother still owned every key to his comfort. My name is Arlene Matthews. I'm 68 years old. It was a late Sunday afternoon when I was pruning the last of my roses as the sun slipped behind the neighbor's oak. This garden had been my sanctuary for over 30 years, each rose a memory. Inside, I could already hear laughter from the living room. Maisie's voice rose above the hum of Paxton's laptop. Babe, look at this one coastal minimalist chic. Exactly the vibe I want when we get our own place. I smiled faintly. They had been living with me for almost a year now, just until they were settled. That was the promise. I had believed it then, as mothers do. I told them not to worry about rent or bills. Save for your down payment, I'd said. That's what family does. A year passed, and instead of saving, they upgraded new car, new furniture, even an espresso machine pricier than my first car. Maisie's online life bloomed with curated breakfasts and intentional living. I said nothing and kept paying the bills. That night I made roast chicken with rosemary and lemon, mashed potatoes. They ate distractedly, eyes fixed on their screens. Maisie was editing a video. Paxton scrolling through something with that furrowed brow. Dinner's lovely. Mom, he murmured absently. Thank you, I said. My hands folded in my lap. Maisie looked up suddenly, as if remembering I existed. Arlene, I was thinking we should really install a smart thermostat. The electricity bill was a bit high this month. I blinked, surprised by the word we. The bill, I asked softly. Yes, she said, smiling with that influencer warmth that never quite reached her eyes. If we could automate the temperature, we'd save energy. It's more sustainable. Paxton nodded. It's efficient. Mom, you've got to think long term. I wanted to laugh. Efficient had never been a word that belonged in our home, but I just smiled, as I always did, and cleared their plates when they were done. A few days later, Maisie dropped another suggestion while sipping her oat milk latte in my kitchen. You know, this neighborhood is really hot right now. The rental potential of this house is just incredible. She said it casually, but her eyes flicked up to gauge my reaction. I felt a quiet tightening in my chest. Rental potential, I echoed. She giggled. Oh, nothing serious. Just saying if you ever wanted to make passive income, this property could do wonders. Paxton grinned, half distracted. She's not wrong. Mom, real estate is all about leverage. You're sitting on an underperforming asset. I turned back to my teacup, stirring it slowly so they wouldn't see my hands tremble. I wasn't sure when my home, the place where David and I built every memory, had turned into an asset. In the days that followed, they began calling rooms spaces. Maisie wanted to repaint to attract better light, and Paxton talked about reinvesting the equity. I told myself it was just talk, young people, mistaking ideas for wisdom. But something in my gut told me otherwise. That evening, Paxton knocked on my door. Mom, can we have a quick family meeting? He said it like a manager summoning an employee. I dried my hands and followed him to the dining room, where a laptop sat open beside Maisie's practice smile. On the screen, a slide read, Matthews Family Financial Restructuring. My stomach tightened. Paxton straightened in his chair, adopting the confident posture I'd once found endearing. Mom, he began. Maisie and I have analyzed the family's financial situation. Analyzed. The word hit me like a cold draft. He continued, his voice smooth. Practiced. To optimize this asset and ensure everyone is contributing responsibly, we need to implement a clear structure. Maisie nodded eagerly. Exactly. It's all about fairness and boundaries. We've done some research. And he held up a hand. Taking over. We believe that starting next month, your rent for the master bedroom should be $2,500. That's the fair market rate for a primary suite in this area. For a moment, I didn't breathe. The air in the room thickened. My rent, I asked quietly. My rent, I asked quietly. Paxton leaned forward, misreading my calm as confusion. It's not personal. Mom, it's just about structure. You've been here rent-free, and it's not sustainable. You'd still have full access to the house. Of course, we'd just be balancing responsibilities. Maisie chimed in, her tone syrupy. It'll actually help you. Arlene, you'll feel more independent. You know, empowered. Empowered. The word almost made me laugh. I looked at them, and for the first time, I felt like strangers at the table. Let me get this straight, I said slowly. You're asking me to pay rent? To live in my own home? Paxton hesitated, then nodded. It's fair. Mom, you've had it good here. It's time we all contribute equally. Maisie reached across the table, touching his arm. It's just business. Arlene, don't take it the wrong way. I folded my hands together and sat back. Business, I repeated softly. The silence that followed was not awkward. It was absolute. Paxton shifted in his chair. Maisie's smile faltered. Finally, I stood. My voice was steady, almost gentle. All right, I said. I'll need some time to consider your business proposal. Paxton exhaled in relief, mistaking my composure for compliance. Maisie smiled again, already reaching for her planner. But as I walked back to my room, something inside me settled. For the first time in a long while, the house no longer felt fragile. It felt like it was waiting for me to remember whose name was really on the deed. The morning after the family meeting, I woke before dawn. Dew shimmered on the roses outside as I sipped black coffee at the old dinner table. Paxton's laptop sat there, faintly glowing like a ghost. After breakfast, I dialed a number I hadn't used in nearly a decade. The line clicked twice before a familiar voice answered, low and steady. Well, I'll be damned. Arlene Matthews. Thought you'd retired from calling lawyers. I smiled despite myself. Morning. Bill. You still practicing? Always. What's going on? I need some advice, I said quietly. About my house. And about my son. There was a long pause on the other end. That's not a sentence I like hearing from clients. Arlene, you want to come by? By noon, I was sitting in his office downtown, the same one David and I had visited years ago when we rewrote our will. Bill sat across from me, reading my notes with a careful expression that told me he was choosing his words before speaking. So, he said finally, your son wants you to pay rent. He calls it structure, and your daughter-in-law calls it empowerment. He leaned back in his chair. That's creative. Disgusting, but creative. We spent the next hour mapping out a plan. His voice was patient but firm. First, you gather proof of what you've invested in that boy, he said. Every check, every transfer, every dollar that left your hands and went to his comfort. Then we move your property into an irrevocable trust. That way, if they ever try to play games with your assets, they'll find out you're not as helpless as they think. An irrevocable trust, I repeated. The words felt strange, powerful, like armor. Bill nodded. Exactly. You'll be the sole trustee. No one touches that house without your signature. It's legal. Iron. When I left his office, the air outside felt lighter. The next few days blurred into paper and memory. Surrounded by David's neatly labeled folders, I traced the record of my love in numbers: tuition, cars, hospital bills, a wedding down payment. By Friday night, the total stood at nearly $500,000 invested in my son's life. I slid the last page into a folder and wrote across it, the family ledger. Saturday morning, Bill called to confirm the paperwork. It's done. Arlene, the trust is active. The deed is transferred. You are now the sole trustee of the Matthews Family Trust. They can huff and puff all they want legally. They own nothing. Thank you, I said softly. He hesitated, then added, Arlene, I've seen a lot of cases like this. Most parents cave before it's too late. You didn't. David would be proud. That sentence nearly undid me. I hung up before my voice could break. By evening, I was back in the garden, pruning a stray branch that had grown too far over the fence. From the kitchen window, I could hear laughter again. Paxton's baritone and Maisie's bright giggle. They were planning something. I could tell by the tone. At dinner, they were unusually cheerful. Maisie had set the table with my best china, the kind I only brought out for holidays. "Mom," Paxton said with exaggerated warmth, "we thought it'd be nice to have a family dinner this weekend. Just us. Aunt Susan. And the cousins. Everyone's been saying we should get together more." I nodded slowly. "That's thoughtful of you." Maisie smiled wide. "We thought so, too. It's just, well, Susan mentioned she's been a little worried about you. You've seemed stressed. Maybe it'll be good for everyone to talk. You know, clear the air." "Clear the air," I echoed, setting down my fork. "You mean convince them I'm losing my mind?" Paxton blinked. "What? No. Mom. That's not. I've known your aunt longer than you've been alive." "Paxton." I interrupted quietly. "I can hear a setup before it starts." He flushed, glancing at Maisie for backup. "We just want what's best for you." "Of course you do," I said, rising from the table. "Just make sure you have all your facts ready. If we're having dinner with family, it's only fair everyone gets to see the numbers." Maisie tilted her head, smiling tightly. "Numbers. Oh, yes," I said. "The ones that tell the story of who's really been paying the bills." The silence that followed was sharp enough to slice through the clinking silverware. Maisie's smile faltered. Paxton looked like he wanted to speak but couldn't find the right words. I didn't give them the chance. That night, as I slipped the freshly sealed trust papers and the family ledger into my desk drawer, the house felt different again. Not colder, but steadier. The storm was coming. They didn't know it yet. But every move they made from here on out was part of a game. I had already learned to win. By Sunday evening, the house felt staged for a performance. Maisie polished the silver and set my best china from our 25th anniversary. Candles flickered. Jazz played softly. And beneath the perfume and roast beef hung a charged tension, an invisible current waiting to spark. Susan arrived first with her husband, Mark, and their 2 grown daughters. She greeted me warmly, but her eyes searched mine a little too long, as if trying to read between the lines of the rumors she'd clearly been fed. "You look wonderful, Arlene," she said, kissing my cheek. "Paxton told us you've been under a lot of stress lately." I smiled, faintly. Did he? Now I must have missed the stress part. Before she could respond, Maisie appeared in the doorway, her smile wide and camera ready. "Dinner's ready. Everyone, please, come in." We sat around the table, and I studied them. Paxton's nervous glances, Mark's avoidance, Maisie's poised hands and perfect curls. After half an hour of hollow chatter and forced laughter, Maisie set down her wine glass with careful precision. "You know," she began, her tone bright and practiced, "I've been thinking a lot about how different things are for our generation compared to our parents." Susan looked intrigued. "Oh," Maisie nodded earnestly. "It's just that we live in a time where financial literacy is everything. And sometimes, as families, we have to make tough decisions for the good of everyone, even when they're uncomfortable." Her words hung in the air, coated in sweetness, but sharp underneath. Paxton reached over and squeezed her hand, picking up where she left off. "What Maisie's trying to say is that Mom has always been the heart of this family. But things change. It's important for her to adapt to new economic realities. We can't keep doing things the old way." "Old way," Susan repeated. He nodded, looking, every bit, the concerned son. "Mom's been carrying the household on her own for years. We just think it's time everyone contributes fairly. It's not about money. It's about structure and respect." Maisie turned toward me, smiling gently. "Arlene, you've done so much for all of us. Truly. But if we don't start organizing things properly, it can become unhealthy. Dependency isn't good for anyone." I could feel Susan stiffen beside me. I caught her husband's quick glance, uneasy and confused. Paxton leaned forward, his tone low and reasonable. "Mom, we've already talked about it. Starting next month, you'd pay rent for your suite. $2,500. It's just the fair rate for this area. We'll handle the management details. You won't have to worry about a thing." A murmur rippled through the table. Susan's eyes widened slightly. One of her daughters choked on her wine. I let the silence stretch, letting them all sit in the discomfort they'd built for themselves. Then I smiled, not with anger, but with something steadier. "Since you both want to talk business," I said, my voice calm and clear, "let's show the family some real numbers." Paxton blinked. "Mom," but I was already rising from my chair. From the sideboard, I retrieved the thick blue binder I had prepared, was labeled neatly in black ink. The family ledger. I placed it on the table with a solid thud that cut through the awkward laughter. "Before we continue," I said, "I want everyone to understand exactly where we stand." I opened the binder to the first section and laid out a crisp legal packet. "Document 1," I said evenly, "is the trust paperwork. As of this week, this house is the property of the Matthews Family Trust. As the sole trustee, I make all the decisions. Paxton, you have no authority to manage anything." The color drained from his face. "You what?" Maisie forced a small laugh. "Wait. What trust, Arlene? I don't think you understand how complicated those things can be." "Oh, I understand perfectly," I said, flipping to the next section. "Now, document 2. This one's my favorite." I slid out a stack of neatly typed pages. It's called The Ledger of Affection. It's a record of what I've invested in my son since he turned 18. I glanced at Paxton, who sat frozen, hands clasped in front of him. "Let's see. 4 years of tuition at the University of Southern California, including housing and meals, $162,000. The car I bought you after graduation, $35,000. Insurance for the first 3 years, $6,000. Wedding down payment, $15,000. And the various loans that were never repaid, another $65,000. In total, the figure comes to $487,350, give or take a few cents." The room was dead silent. Susan's daughters exchanged shocked glances. Mark leaned back in his chair, whistling softly under his breath. Susan finally spoke, her tone cutting. "Paxton, is that true?" He looked cornered, defensive. "Mom, this isn't necessary." "I think it is," I interrupted. "Because you wanted structure, accountability, fairness. Those are your words." Maisie shifted uncomfortably. "Arlene, I think you're overreacting. We were just trying to have a responsible conversation." "Good," I said. "Then you'll appreciate the final document." I turned the page to reveal a professional lease agreement, printed on thick ivory paper. I slid 2 copies across the table toward them. "This is my counterproposal. If you wish to continue living here, you'll pay the trust $3,000 per month in rent, plus a 3-month security deposit. And of course, you'll need to pass a credit check." Maisie's mouth fell open. "You're joking." "I never joke about business," I said calmly. Paxton's voice rose, cracking. "You can't just, Mom. This is insane." I met his eyes. "No, son. This is structure. The very thing you wanted." He pushed back his chair, the legs scraping the hardwood. "You went behind our backs. You actually hired a lawyer." I tilted my head slightly. It's what responsible adults do when they're managing an asset. The remark hit him like a slap. Maisie looked around for support, but all she found were Susan's furious eyes. "I can't believe this." Maisie stammered. We were trying to help. Susan's hand slammed onto the table, startling everyone. "Help? By charging your mother rent for her own house? Have you lost your minds?" Paxton tried to speak, but Susan cut him off. "You should be ashamed. Arlene put you through college. She kept this family afloat after David passed. And this is how you repay her." With PowerPoint slides and invoices, Paxton's mouth opened and closed without sound. Maisie sat rigid, her cheeks flushed with humiliation. I closed the binder and folded my hands atop it. "I don't expect an apology," I said softly. "But from now on, the terms are clear. You're either tenants of this house, or you find another one." For a long moment, no one moved. Then Susan stood, shaking her head. You deserve better than this. Arlene. Truly. She turned to her husband. We're leaving. They gathered their things in silence. Their daughters following. The door closed behind them with a solid, echoing click. At the table, Maisie's mascara had begun to smudge. She stood abruptly. I can't. This is too much, she whispered. Storming down the hall, Paxton stayed seated, his eyes on the binder. His voice was low when he finally spoke. You really did all this, didn't you? Yes, I said. And I'd do it again. He swallowed hard. Disbelief replacing anger, then followed his wife without a word. The house fell silent, the scent of candles fading. I put the binder away, turned off the music, and stood amid the remnants of their show. No triumph, just the calm certainty of someone done begging for respect. By morning, the house was too quiet. From the kitchen window, I saw Maisie pacing the porch, phone in hand. That afternoon, the storm hit. A neighbor texted me first, Arlene. Is everything all right? You're all over Instagram. I frowned, clicked the link she sent. And there it was, a video of Maisie, framed perfectly in warm light, tears glittering against her blush. She spoke softly, her voice breaking at practiced intervals. I never thought I'd have to share something this personal, she began. But sometimes, the people who are supposed to love you the most become toxic. We tried to help her. Truly. We just wanted to teach her to manage her finances responsibly. And now, she's kicking us out for caring too much. Behind her, I could see the living room, the corner where my husband's old armchair still sat. It made me sick. She dabbed at her eyes. I guess you can do everything right and still be treated like the villain. But we'll be okay. God sees the truth. She ended the video with a deep sigh, clutching Paxton's hand for effect. He sat beside her, silent and sullen, a supporting actor in his wife's performance. Within hours, the video exploded. Hundreds of comments flooded in sympathy, outrage, strangers offering prayers for the abused couple. Maisie reposted snippets to her stories, tagging phrases like number toxic parents and number boundaries matter. But then, the tide turned. It started when Susan commented under the post. Her words were sharp as glass. Funny how you forgot to mention that you tried to charge your mother-in-law $2,500 in rent for her own house, or that she paid for Paxton's college, his car, and your wedding. Maybe post that part too, sweetheart. The replies came fast and merciless. Another cousin chimed in, Maisie. This isn't a boundary issue. It's greed. Arlene's been nothing but generous. We all saw the receipts. And then, strangers joined in. Comment after comment called them entitled, parasitic, spoiled influencers pretending to be victims. Hashtags flipped overnight. Number toxic parents became number toxic children. Someone even dug up Maisie's public credit, brag posts, designer handbags, first-class vacations, sponsored brand deals, and compared them to the crying video. The contrast was brutal. By evening, Maisie deleted the post. But screenshots live forever. Within a week, they were packing, no apology. Just boxes, scraping floors and doors slamming. When they left, the house felt lighter, though the silence was heavy. Days passed before a knock came. Paxton stood there, unshaven, eyes hollow. Mom, he said quietly. Do you know any landlords who'd rent to us? Us? I asked. He hesitated. Maisie and me. I shook my head slowly. I don't. Paxton. But you might want to check your credit score first. He looked away. We already have. It's bad. Every place we apply turns us down. I didn't have to ask why. I already knew. A few days later, word reached me through Susan. The truth had spilled out. Their luxury car was leased. The cards maxed. The fame fake. They didn't want structure. They needed my rent money to survive. It didn't make me angry, only sad. They'd built a house of mirrors, all reflection, no walls. The final collapse came a month later. I heard it through a mutual friend who didn't realize I hadn't been told. Maisie had left. Apparently. The stress had become unbearable. The rejections. The debts. The public humiliation. She blamed Paxton for everything. Your plan ruined everything. She had shouted before slamming the door, suitcase in hand. As for my son, he stayed behind in the wreckage of what they'd built. He tried to repair his reputation. But the internet is a cruel archivist. It remembers everything. Potential clients dropped him. Friends distanced themselves. Even his co-workers avoided him, afraid the drama would stain them by association. I didn't hear from him directly, though occasionally I'd see his name pop up in small ways, an updated LinkedIn headline, a comment on someone's post. But the bravado was gone. One evening, I saw Paxton's car parked down the street, engine off, his silhouette still. He never came to the door, just stared at the house he once tried to price. I watched quietly, feeling only sadness for what pride can ruin. By morning, he was gone. The roses bloomed again under the San Diego sun. Life pruning itself, leaving room to grow. I turned toward my quiet house and prayed my son would learn the same. 6 months passed before I saw Paxton again. The roses had bloomed and faded twice, and the house had found its calm rhythm, the hum of the fridge, wind in the curtains, David's old wind chimes. The silence now was gentle, no longer hollow. One evening, Susan called me. "He's doing all right," she said carefully. "Not great, but different. He's working 2 jobs. Doesn't complain. Doesn't talk much either." The image of my once polished son, now quietly rebuilding his life, stayed with me. I no longer saw the man who demanded rent, but the boy who washed cars with David and left me notes saying, "You're the best mom ever." One Sunday, instinct led me to his modest apartment near the freeway. I stood at his door, unsure whether to knock or walk away. Before I could decide, the door opened. Paxton stood there, thinner than I remembered, his hair a little longer, dark circles under his eyes. He froze when he saw me. "Mom." "Paxton," I said quietly. "May I come in?" He stepped aside without a word. The apartment was small, just one room, a kitchenette, and a folding table doubling as a desk. The faint smell of takeout lingered in the air. On the wall hung a single framed photo of David and me from our wedding day. I felt my chest tighten when I saw it. "I didn't think you'd come," he said finally, breaking the silence. "I wasn't sure I would," I admitted. "But Susan told me you're trying." He gave a short, humorless laugh. "Trying. That's one word for it." He motioned for me to sit at the small table. On it lay a stack of papers, neatly organized handwritten notes, spreadsheets, a few receipts. He slid them toward me. "This is for you." I frowned, glancing through the pages. "What is this?" "A repayment plan," he said. "I wrote down everything you've done for me, everything I could remember. The tuition, the car, the wedding. I know I can't pay it all back, but I want to start. $50 a week for now. I'll increase it when I can." I stared at him. His voice wasn't defensive or rehearsed. It was steady, almost humble. "Paxton," I said softly, "you don't owe me money." He shook his head. "I do. Not because you asked for it. Because I need to do this for me. I was wrong. Mom." His voice cracked. "I was wrong to think love had to be transactional. That value was something you could measure in dollars. You gave me everything, and I treated it like an investment I could control. I don't know why I did it. Maybe pride. Maybe stupidity. Probably both." I listened, my throat tightening. The words came out slow, but they came from somewhere. Real somewhere. The performative gloss had finally peeled away. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he went on. "I just needed to say it out loud. To own it." I stayed silent, watching the slump of his shoulders and the nervous turn of his pen. He was no longer the man of PowerPoint plans, just my son again, humbled and stripped of pride. Finally, I reached across the table and covered his hand with mine. "Paxton, I forgave you the moment you left. Forgiveness isn't the hard part. Trust is." And that's something you'll have to earn back. Slowly. He nodded. Eyes wet. I understand. I smiled faintly. But I'll make you a deal. You can keep your repayment plan, if it helps you feel responsible. But instead of sending the money to me, put it in a savings account. Name it the Matthews Future Fund. Maybe someday, when you have a child, you'll use it for them. He laughed softly through his tears. You're still trying to teach me lessons. Huh. It's what mothers do, I said, that evening. We shared simple takeout, warm, honest. Enough. We talked about small things, work, weather, life. Each word a brick in something new. As the sun set in gold and red, Paxton walked me to my car. Quieter, but lighter. Mom, he said softly. Thank you for coming. I looked at him for a long moment. You're welcome. Son, keep growing. Driving home, I passed a florist, roses in every color, all in bloom. I thought of my own garden and how, after every harsh winter, they returned stronger. Maybe redemption is the same, just time, light, and the courage to grow again. I still can't believe I went through all of that betrayal, heartbreak, and the long road back to peace. But looking back now, I see that sometimes life has to break you to teach you how to rebuild. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing peace over pride. If my story touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'd love to hear your story too.